Thinking about employee engagement, it's really, as I think about it, it's like how enthusiastic are people and how connected are they to the organization, to really the organization's mission, vision, core values. We've done a lot of work with an organization called Energage, and they actually have a definition that aligns nicely with what we believe about employee engagement. So Energage says that employee engagement is the degree to which an individual person connects with and commits to the mission and goals of an organization. So it's kind of like, what is an individual person's level of passion working toward a shared mission or a shared set of goals, or a way that you would define success for your organization. And ultimately, the way that Energage defines this is it means that this isn't just something you do to people, it's something you have to inspire in them. So you've got to get people to really believe in what your organization stands for. So if you think about mission and vision and you separate those two out, a lot of times people use those words interchangeably and they're not. Mission is why you exist. Vision is what you hope to be. That one's usually time sensitive. In the next 3 to 5 years, our vision for our organization is X. But our mission is this, and the mission usually doesn't change over time. It's why you exist as an organization. So
I would define it as it's the level of commitment that somebody has to their work. It's the passion that people bring when they're sitting in a room and with colleagues, and just the way they perform their work. I think it's also loyalty that an employee has to what they do and who they do it for. So that's either the organization and the client. So an example of that would be that when somebody arrives 10 minutes early and they're excited to get the work started, they're in meetings and they're sharing ideas that they have because they really see kind of the vision and they see where we might be able to do things differently or even better. And they're always looking for ways to just improve themselves, but also for ways to improve the organization. And I always call that kind of this hunger that people have. And it's just like they want to learn more, they want to be better. And so to me, those are all signs of what I would think of as employee engagement.
It's about the employees being a part of your organizational culture, having employees who participate and having mechanisms in place to allow them to participate in a majority of the decision making that goes on.
Yeah, so why or why not? So I believe for the most part, we have high level of employee engagement. We do a top workplace survey every year. It's an anonymous survey that every employee is asked to do. We always have a high response rate. This last year, we had an 87% response rate. We're usually in the low to mid 80s. And 67% of our employees are engaged, according to Energage. And that's really a pretty good mark. 25% of them are enthusiastically engaged. And if you think about if 67% are engaged, so that's either means they're enthusiastically engaged or engaged, that's 9% above the benchmark. So based on that data, I think that we have a high level of employee engagement. What this Energage survey does is it measures engagement as the percentage of employees who are highly motivated, committed to staying with the organization, and willing to highly recommend your organization to others. And so it gives 3 statements, and it asks all of our employees to answer these 3 questions. So, this company motivates me to give my very best at work. That's statement number 1, and then you say on a Likert scale where you fall out on that. Number 2 is I would highly recommend working at this company to others. And number 3 says, I have not considered searching for a better job in the past 4 months. So, as you know, as one of our employees, that top workplace survey asks a whole bunch of questions.
Right.
But those 3 specific questions are then used to measure employee engagement. And that's how Energage measures it. And I think those are industry standards. Those are pretty common questions to measure how engaged people are. Compensation is a piece of it, but all the research will say it's not about the money. It's
Right.
about, do I feel that I'm contributing back to something that's meaningful? Do I have good relationships with the people I work with? what's the culture of the organization? We work hard at Region 20 in creating, you know, I always call it work hard, play hard. You know, we're going to expect you to work your tail off, but let's have some fun where we work as well. I think one of the things that helps us too is that we're in education, and if people can see that their work ultimately impacts kids, it's easier to have a heart for it, right?
Yes.
And so I think that kind of plays in. And as you know, we try to do some things to recognize that people need balance in their life, that their job isn't the only thing they do, but also provide some, so in that we try to provide some flexibility for people and just kind of acknowledge, you know, Jennifer, and you look at our organization, if you're here for a long time, you can lose sight of the fact of what it's like, what I call in the real world, the private sector.
Right.
Where you get a lot less flexibility with leave time. I think we have a really good overall compensation package when you look at our leave time, you look at our retirement benefit, you look at, you know, because that involves teacher retirement system as well as Social Security. Our overall salary is pretty good. You know, we benchmark every year to see, are we in alignment with the San Antonio markets? We take that seriously as well.
Right.
So I think all those things contribute, you know, so I don't think it's one thing we do, you know, it's not convocation every year that pulls this off, or it's not the fact that we let people have early outs on Fridays in July. You know, it's all this stuff that we've put together that I think contributes to the overall package of organizational culture and health, which then impacts employee engagement.
So I think overall, I would classify it as high engagement. And the evidence that I look for is, one, we have really low turnover at the service center. So overall, compared to like our city of San Antonio in general, you know, we have a pretty good percentage rate. So it means people stay. They come to the center, and for the most part, they stay. I also think that in a lot of the work we do, we offer a lot of autonomy to people. I mean, our work isn't one that I can give you a book to say, here is how you do your job. Right. It's one that people come and we depend heavily on what they bring, their expertise, their experience to the work. And so they have, I think it's a gift of autonomy to really make work what it could be, which I think lends itself nicely to people being more engaged in it. And then probably most importantly, I think what we do, the work we do at the center is really about helping our school districts, which ultimately impact kids, children. And I think that's a pretty easy, you know, mission and vision to get around, where people feel like, yeah, it's hard work, but look who we're doing it for. Right. And so I think what we do and who we do it for really helps with engaging employees. And of course, one of our core values is around employee talent. So we recognize, just like what you said, I mean, recruiting, growing, and retaining, you know, top talent is the core of our business. So, you know, every year we do our top workplace survey, and there are multiple questions in that survey that, you know, these are for our employees, by our employees. It's complete feedback that comes from them. And there's a section in there that's about engagement. So it asks multiple questions about, you know, do you believe in the work you do? Does your supervisor help you find the meaning in the work? I mean, it's just all about communication and how people feel about their work. But we get feedback, and the feedback's been good. I do believe that people are connected, and to the couple of things I mentioned, they mention that. We do important work here. We're helping schools, we're helping kids. They feel like they have control over how they do their work. You know, it's not very micromanaged at the center, just because every work is so different and very, you know, tailored to an expertise, if you will. But we've looked at that feedback, and I think that's evidence as well that we see that people are connected in that way. And so, you know, that's the kind of data that we're keeping our eye on, because we agree employee engagement is extremely important. And the other thing is that when we survey our clients, which is another aspect of data, when we ask them about what they appreciate most about the center or where they think we're really being most effective, I'll tell you that it's not a name of a program per se, or a name of a specific service, but more about people. So there are names in their comments about who they appreciate and what that person does. So it's, you know, it's pretty evident that people are our business. You know, our staff really is Region 20. It's not the buildings at 1314 Hines Avenue. That's not Region 20. It's the people that work inside those buildings that really matter.
Yes, I do believe it's really high here because not only do we have multiple opportunities for employees to be engaged here at the center, we actually have documented processes and instructions that allow for employees to be engaged. We host a variety of, at all levels of the organization, from cafe workers to our board members, can all participate in various organizational activities that allow them to be part of the process. When we went through and redid our mission, vision, values, we actually brought in folks from across the organization on a volunteer basis to help us come up with what that vision is supposed to be like. You know, we believe in employees, our employee talent, and we need those talented employees in order for us to succeed as an organization.
So first off, one of the things that we've done through our leadership across the center, so we have leadership cabinet, which is 5 of us, and then we have center leadership, which is about 20 of us. Those are our directors and above. And we've never made the top workplace be about winning the top workplace. It's always about continuous improvement. So it's just, how are you getting employee voice to know how you're doing so that you can keep trying to get better? And I think that's a part of it. You know, when we went through a strategic visioning, our strategic planning process about 18 months ago, as we refined our core values and really kind of brought them down to 4 core values, the foundational one that really emerged is employee talent. And that is, how do you recruit, grow, and retain top talent? And our top workplace results, as we look at that particular employee, our core value, and then we look at our leadership, every one of our leadership directors gets a report from the top workplace data. It's completely anonymous, but they get their component. And we have a review and analysis process where they start to dig into their data. What are my employees and my component trying to say to me? And we do a continuous improvement protocol with our center leadership team members as we work through those top workplace results. And it's really simple. What are the 3 big celebrations? Like, what are you doing really well in your component that you just definitely need to keep doing? And then what are 3 opportunities for improvement? What are 3 things that you think, yeah, we need to do a better job of this in the component? I'm hearing this loud and clear from our employees. And then lastly, what are 3 collective commitments that our team is committing to for this upcoming year that we're going to work on this? And what I've recognized as we've done top workplace over the years is it's really difficult to do that as an organization. But when you start to get it down to the component level, because it's so nuanced, it might be like in the technology services, here are the strengths, and we've got these 2 opportunities for improvement. Well, those opportunities for improvement might be strengths over in the instructional services side. So you've really got to get it down to the director level so that they can really start to work on, you know, what are 2 or 3 things that really want us to work on as a component this year, just to better engage our employees. So I think that's been a big piece of how our leadership is involved. You also know some of the things we've done over the last few years since I moved into this role are like coffee and conversations and connections. So it's just these more informal conversations with employees about who we are and where we're going, and just feedback.
I love that.
And I guess the other thing I would say is people just know that it's an expectation of me, because having come up in the organization and having put an emphasis and a priority on relationships with employees. That's not always been the case for people who have been the executive director here.
Right.
So in some instances, it was unusual for people to have such access to the executive director.
Right.
But for me, it's just, you know, I'm humble. It's just, you're a person, I'm a person. I came up with you in the organization. So I think people see that, and since I expect it and model it, I think they all feel kind of obligated to build those kinds of relationships.
So, you know, the answer to that question is they play a very vital role in increasing employee engagement. And one is that, you know, and you mentioned a little bit about this, but onboarding new staff and training new staff is really important. You know, that's our opportunity to introduce them to the organization, where we can really talk about what the work we do, you know, at the center means, who we do it for. And that's like kind of where you start to build that purpose for staff. so they can buy in. And then I think to me that kind of starts the engagement piece around working for this organization. So who are we and what do we do at the service center? But ensuring that you're onboarding people appropriately is, I think, vital to that. Because sometimes people say, oh, we need them to start really quickly. Could they just skip the onboarding? I mean, it's like sometimes you get so worked into the mode of work that you forget that onboarding piece is important for new staff, because we want to get them from the beginning. You can't go back after somebody's been working here for a while and say, oh, let's get you back onto the onboarding process. It's like we missed our window of opportunity. So keeping that really focused, and I think as leaders in an organization, saying that's a non-negotiable, starts off employees on the right foot.
And so when you say onboarding, is that like starting with HR as being that vital role?
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, in our instance, we used to make that, I think it was like a day, or maybe a day and a half. That's what onboarding was for new employees. And then we, as a leadership team, we came together and said, you know, that's not enough. We can't just have them go and do paperwork at HR and fill out insurance forms. And then all of a sudden they would come to our side, you know, where we needed them to sit at their desk or cubicle, and there's no computer for them yet because we haven't gotten that figured out. There may not even be a supervisor there because maybe that person's out training, or, you know, didn't put it on their calendar and know that person was starting that day. So there was too many opportunities for us to miss that kind of, like what they say, you can't get a second chance to make a first impression. And we weren't making, I think, the best impression on every new employee. So we said, we need to come back and we need to figure out a PDSA. How do we make it better? And we said, now we have a member of our leadership cabinet. So me, Jeff or Paul or Jennifer, one of us attends each one of those onboarding sessions. And we talk to the new employees and say, this is the organization that you have just joined. We are happy you're here. And let me tell you about what's most important about what we do. Here are our values. Here's our service standards. We talk about what customer service looks like. So it's just a great opportunity to, I think, get people to say, wow, this is an organization I just joined. This is not about me filling out paperwork at HR. So we've redone that, but that would be advice I would give to another organization who says, gosh, that, you know, let's not skip onboarding. Let's not make it minimal. Really take that opportunity to start off on the right foot. Something else I would add is building community. I think that really helps people feel engaged at all levels, right? When you believe you're part of something bigger, that, you know, when we could, at one time, we could get together for, you know, convocation, we could get together for, you know, employee appreciation. We did a lot of those things because the community building is really important. And of course, now we're in a time of remotes, right? Everything is remote. Everybody's, you know, not physically in a place. I think there are a lot of ways you can still keep that moving and going. But we're going to have to learn those ways, because that's not the way we've done business in the past.
Right.
But that's a part, again, you can't forget, because people really need to feel connected to something. I can't be engaged if I don't feel emotionally connected. Because so it's the heart too. I think you have to get with people.
Mostly it's just about encouragement and providing opportunity. Our leadership cabinet here, myself included, when we are faced with a decision we have to make down the road, whether that's how employees are going to dress, you know, what technologies we're going to purchase, what our cost point is going to be for training. You know, we one of the first questions we always ask ourselves is, do we need to get together an engagement committee to, you know, have discussions about this to make sure we're covering all the bases before we put this procedure in final writing? I mean, sometimes the answer is no, but we still get the input.
Right.
You know?
And do you think that the organizational leaders are just, that their role in employee engagement is real high here? Or do you think it's more with the leadership cabinet, or do you think that the whole center of leadership, as far as like supervisors and directors?
You know, it's highly encouraged from the leadership cabinet down, even through our leadership development academy, which all of our leaders have to go through. That's kind of a portion we cover in that training as new leaders come on board. You know, that's something we talk about quite a bit. So, you know, if you live it from the top, it'll go down. Now, is that to say every leader in this organization does that? No. You know, and depending on their particular mission for that department or that program. There may not, with our software developers probably don't want to go out for employee engagement on how they're going to code their product. So there's that software development team and that leader probably not a big proponent of that. However, when they do other decisions like, where employees going to sit, how are they going to work in a certain area, what products are they going to use, then they do that,
Wow, again, 18 years, some people that put in that much time in organizations, it's kind of like the Flintstones, and you just punch in the rock time card.
Yeah.
But that's not that way for me. I'm just so excited about this organization and the potential and what we do every day.
Right.
I don't think I've ever been disengaged
Right.
in 18 years. It's just, there's always something. I think part of it too is because it's so varied and it's so evolving, things change so quickly that you have to kind of respond appropriately, but then provide enough structure and stability and vision and purpose for all the staff to kind of stay focused and stay feel like they're in a stable environment, although there's a lot of stuff changing all the time, right?
Right.
So, I think that's, it helps to increase my engagement, but I think also just because that's part of how I work, I think that kind of stuff kind of fires me up a little bit. And
Right. Do you think that due to this pandemic, do you think that it has not necessarily caused disengagement, but do you think that it has challenged you in a lot of new ways that you never thought before you may have to experience or, do?
Yes. A big one around the pandemic is we quickly shifted, and you've heard me say this on the town halls, we've quickly shifted to an emergency remote work option because we had to.
Right.
But we're not, and so as a result, we have a lot of people asking, can we just start working like this? And it just seems so simple on the surface. It's not a simple question and it's not a simple answer. So
Right.
I fear that the remote work, if we continued in remote work, it would certainly impact organizational culture. I don't know how yet, but I know the things that feed organizational culture require relationship and connection with people.
Absolutely.
I fear that if we did something in a way that wasn't thoughtful, in a way that wasn't intentional, that it could have a negative impact on the future of the organization. So what I wrestle with is just helping people to understand that it's not just that easy of a decision, and we need to all come back together and get back to normal, and then really study this and figure out the right way to do this to see, do I think differently about remote work now? I absolutely do. And I do think there's certain positions that would actually flourish with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there are others that it's completely inappropriate for. So,
Right.
There's been good and bad with this. I think if you were to engage our organizational health, our employee engagement right now, it would be lower. Just because of what the pandemic's done. We're disconnected. I think people feel a lot of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
There's some uncertainty about school districts in general. So what does that mean for us? So this just caused a lot of angst in people. And we're going to have to really re-anchor ourselves on our mission and vision and core values, which, by the way, are still very appropriate for where we are right now.
Right.
We just revisited those. It's like, this is more true now than ever. We really need to be this. So that's a great question, and I think it's unknown right now, but I do feel like, when you look at those three factors about my company motivates me to give my very best, I'd highly recommend working there, and I haven't considered looking for a better job. I think those answers may have shifted a little bit over the last couple months just because of our context.
So absolutely. I think that it's common that at times, depending on the work we're doing, that our engagement will change, right? It depends. I think of seasons. I always call them seasons of our work or seasons of our life, where just depending on what's happening, that always impacts in some way, shape, or form employee engagement. But there's a book by Daniel Pink, and it's called Drive.
Okay.
And in that book, he talks about what motivates or drives people like to show up and give it everything they've got and be really successful. And there's three big pieces that he talks about. One is autonomy. When people have autonomy to do the work that they do, that, that drives them to do more, makes them more engaged. The second one is mastery. So when they do something and they feel like they do it at a really high level, like I know my work inside and out, I feel like an expert. When they get to that level with their work, like there's nothing stopping them, right? And then the last one is about purpose. So they believe that what they do matters. It's not a mundane task that I have to complete. It actually means something. So they understand the why they do their work. But in a lot of aspects of the work that we do at the center, it requires us to change frequently. So if you can think about the majority of our work is, every 2 years, we have a legislative session, which means there will be new laws that will come out every 2 years that will impact how school districts operate. Well, that influences our work too, and we have to change every 2 years. And I don't know, there's a lot of places where people could work that they would know for sure every 2 years something's going to be different. And we've just worked, many of us here, long enough to just be okay with that.
Do you think that that's why we have that changes opportunity embedded into our values?
Yes, because I think if people are really uncomfortable with change, that working at a center like ours, even in education, I think in a lot of areas, even in technology, I mean, think about the work you do. Right. Change is inevitable. I mean, you're changing more frequently than we are, just because, Paul always says, well, by the time we buy it all, it's already outdated. So, I mean, to live in that constant world of change is not an easy thing. But some people are really good at pivoting and can just make those changes quickly. And I think the more you do it, the better you get at it. Right. But when that happens, sometimes the change requires that you might have to, acquire a new set of skills. Maybe you're going to have to do things differently now than you've ever done them. And we're living through a prime example of that. I mean, before, just a few months ago, for 52 years, we have been a professional development, organization. We've had people come to us face to face for training, and we have buildings to house these trainings and people. And now we're overnight, our work is now no longer people coming physically to a location. We're remotely providing our staff development. So a lot of us are having to acquire new skill sets. So if you think about mastery, right, that big proponent for making us feel like, yes, I want to do this work. It's so important. I love it. When we're tasked to do something that requires a new skill set that we're not really good at, but we were really good before, and now we won't feel very good about ourselves and our capabilities yet, it impacts the engagement just a little bit, because you have to work your way back. And I think that when people are really good with change, they can do that comfortably. But to say, oh gosh, people are going to be 100% engaged all the time, I just think different instances impact it. And personally, it impacts me that way. I want to feel good about my skill set. And when I'm asked to do something differently, and it puts me in that kind of outside of my comfort zone, I find myself like, oh, I don't really want to do it, but I will because I have to. But maybe in 3 months, I'm going to do it with ease and love it. But it's going to take me some time to get there. So I think we have to be cognizant of that with our own staff that we work with, is that, we're going to, as a supervisor, it's my job to support people through change. So we're changing, but we're training our staff. We're making sure that, we're checking in with them. We just can't let them have to go through that process alone. It's our job of an organization, everybody, to provide support and training for people so that they feel good about their skill sets, and then they can have the autonomy, have the mastery, and they create their own purpose, which I think leads to just more engaged staff. And I know it does for me.
It really fluctuates, and a lot of it has to do with the timeliness of the decision. There's not always time for committee input. That's why leaders are leaders. Sometimes you just got to make the call, and sometimes it's a limited, hey, bring some folks together. Hey, we've got to be here in X amount of time. What are our options? Okay, thank you for your input. Ultimately, the leader is going to make the decision on the best way to get there. in the best interest of the department, the division, and the organization.
Yes.
There's a lot of power when you can put some resources and energy into employee engagement. It really can be transformational for your organization, because your employees ultimately, as you hear me always say, are the brand. They're the kind of the fiber of the organization, and so
Right.
it's just so critical. And the thing is, it's hard sometimes because it can be a little gray space to work in, because it's not real quantitative. It's very qualitative in nature.
Right.
But I think where you see it show up is in your top workplace results as far as employee engagement. You see it show up in your retention rates. So we have a low turnover at Region 20, about half of what the city of San Antonio does. I think that's where it kind of plays out.
Absolutely.
After receiving excellent feedback on employee engagement from ESC-20's leadership, I realized employee engagement is not just about job satisfaction or happiness. Rather, it's about emotional commitment that people have to an organization and the organization's goals. Engagement is so important because it makes employees go that extra mile, put in the extra effort to get to the mission of the organization. When you engage the employees, productivity for the business is going to be higher, and so will its profits. The most recent Gallup study found that in 2019, the percentage of engaged workers in the U.S. reached 35%. This is a new high since Gallup began tracking the metric in 2000. So what does this mean? It means that organizations are starting to realize that employee engagement means higher return and more productivity. This is not a new concept at ESC-20, however. ESC-20 has put in a tremendous amount of effort in actively engaging employees since the beginning of its time. With the help of leaders such as Dr. Goldhorn, Dr. Castillo, and Mr. Patillo, among many others, employees will continue to receive direction on how to be more engaged in the workforce. As Patrick Lencioni stated in his book, The Truth About Employee Engagement, human beings need to be needed. And they need to be reminded of this pretty much every day. They need to know they are helping others and not merely serving themselves. In closing, organizations with employees who are thoroughly motivated and truly engaged with what they are doing is the most powerful competitive weapon any organization can enjoy.